Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. I'm your host, Jamie Lima, and founder of Legent Divorce Solutions, where we help people prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce. This podcast is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. In today's episode, I have the ultimate privilege of speaking with Lisa Johnson, co-founder of Been There, Got Out, and a leading high-conflict divorce strategist and certified domestic violence advocate. Lisa has not only navigated her own complex legal battles, but also influenced significant legislative changes in domestic violence law. Today, we'll delve into her experiences and insights on managing high-conflict relationships and the legal nuances of family court. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, and let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Lisa, it's so great to have you here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Jamie.
Yes, fellow New Englander too. We're kind of. I grew up roughly in the neck of the woods that you live right now, so it's good to have someone like you on the show with us today. And I think you're going to have a ton of insight for us. A lot of the cases that we come across on the financial side are riddled with craziness. So to speak, and you know, we kind of talked about this on the lead in. Everybody's marrying or married to or divorcing a narcissist, but I know there's some technical and definition of that word. So I try not to use it too much. All of our clients tend to bring it up in conversation, but I know that there are some, you know, there's crazy, and then there's next level crazy when it comes to divorce and the experiences that, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, like, how does one know when it's a high conflict divorce versus normal? Because we know that at the beginning, everybody's angry. And one of the things that we noticed is that in our cases, because my partner and I only deal exclusively with high conflict divorce and post-judgment cases, that these are the ones where the anger does not subside. So in most divorces, everyone's angry, but generally 4 to 6 months in, the money is flying out the door and you're like, all right, both of us should probably start like reining it in, doing what's best for the kids and looking to resolve this. Ours are the cases that are the opposite. So when everyone else is around being logical, ours are the cases where our client's ex is interested in destroying them and keeping it going for as long as possible. Because once they're out of the day-to-day relationship, they're limited to 3 things. We always say money, kids, and the court. And money and the court go hand in hand. It's not just legal bills, but time that you take off from work, the way it affects you emotionally, your health suffers. So all of that involves money and suffering. And that's what your ex's goal is. It's to just keep it going.
As you were walking us through that, I thought about my own situation and going through my own divorce. So I'll share with you because I'm an open book, and then you can dissect me. You can analyze me, right?
Okay.
And you can analyze my case. We'll use my case study. So when I decided I wanted a divorce, I think I mentioned it 3 times. I think this is like happening. Like, so you got to get your head around this and so on. So I mentioned it, and then nothing happened. And then ultimately I'm just like, this has to happen. Right. Mm-hmm. And I remember the moment where I was getting ready to leave the house, you know, not for the last time, but like for the last time, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, like, I just want everybody to get along. Like, what's in the best interest of the kids? I want you to be okay. Let's just sort this all out. We'll figure, like, this is like, it just has to be this way. And she looked me dead in the eye and said, I will make this as painful and as expensive as I possibly can. There
you go.
So, all right. It was nice having you on the show. So what do you do in that situation? What should I have done?
Okay. Oh, there's a lot. So look, you have to realize that people who are in abusive relationships, and I'm not talking about the obvious physical abuse, because that's what most people think of when they think of domestic violence. But domestic violence involves all kinds of other things, like something called coercive control, which includes emotional abuse, verbal, psychological, isolation, stalking, revenge porn, which is, you know, threatening to publish sexual images of you if you don't stay in the relationship or do what they want, legal abuse, all kinds of things to create a dependency to stay in the relationship. I saw your eyes widen.
I can't believe people actually do that.
Yeah. 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 So that's what our world is. Like our community is full of people who are stuck in these relationships. Basically, they have their own personal terrorist. So that person is like saying what your ex-wife said. I am going to destroy you. I'm going to make it as painful as possible, as long as possible. Just because when the relationship ends, there's a difference between a typical person and someone who's got a true personality disorder and or addiction, where they don't even have proper judgment because they're so impaired by, again, whether it's like a addiction or some other thing. So if they can't even think about their own best interest, how can they actually consider everything that comes with a divorce, where it's not just your money, but your kids and your entire future? So it makes things really, really difficult.
And what do you do?
All right. So yeah. Oh yeah, that was the question. What do you do? Okay. So once you see that someone says something like that, or you get the sense like, I thought we both wanted to move on with their lives, but this person doesn't, you need to make sure that you surround yourself with professionals that really get it. So one of the things we talk about one of the most important people on your team is a lawyer. So we always say how important it is to choose the right attorney. So when you meet for a consult, you want to make sure that you find someone. They don't have to be an expert in narcissism, but they have to understand strategy and how to approach these cases differently. So, for example, we think the world is generally logical and lawyers are logical, and they think, okay, you're both going to come to the table where each person's going to do what's fair and what's in the kid's best interest. But that is not how it works with someone like our exes, because that person only cares about themselves. So when you meet a lawyer for the first time and you talk about the situation with what's happening in your relationship, you want to ask the question, how would you handle a case like mine? Because you already know like something is off. It's not following the normal cadence of divorce where you're angry and you decide and then it moves into resolution over time. And so this is a two-pronged question, because when you ask, how would you handle a case like mine with an attorney, it gives you the opportunity to see that they've actually listened to you and understand that your case is different. They cannot approach it with logic alone. And the other thing is, it gives you the opportunity to hear what strategy they use. Because if you say, oh, my ex is a narcissist, do you have experience? They're going to say, of course I do. I handle all divorces. But a lot of lawyers get very fatigued by cases like these because they don't follow the normal pattern. It's crazy. We always say that our clients belong to my lawyer says this is the craziest case I've ever had club. So it really confounds people where they're like, why don't they just do the right thing? Or why don't they just, and it becomes really frustrating. So another thing that's important is something we call taking strategic oversight of your case, which includes understanding that yours is going to be different and that you're going to play a much more active role. So you are not going to be the person that drops $25,000 on a retainer and says, that lawyer, you saved my life. Like, you are going to have to be very responsible for understanding what's going on, knowing what motions are being filed, getting as much information about the financials as possible, like working strategically with your lawyer where something doesn't feel right and you've negotiated like 8,000 times and gotten nowhere to say, you know what, I'm not going to pay for it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, understanding you're the client, so you're a consumer. Like, you want to spend your money wisely instead of just being led into things that you see are not working.
Where were you 8 years ago?
Everybody says that.
Because you just as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking about all the mistakes I made along the way.
Yeah, we all
which effectively propelled me into doing this work, because I'm trying to make sure other people don't step in the same landmines, right? And the first, which is exactly why you do what you do, right? And number one thing that came to mind is I didn't surround myself with the right people. Right. I didn't have divorce coaches. I didn't have like people like you in my corner. I didn't even hire a CDFA myself. Right. Like I've been a financial planner for almost 20 years at this stage. I was probably 14 years into my career at that point. Like, I got it. Just math. No problem. Big mistake. Right. I interviewed a couple attorneys, hired one that I thought was going to be, help me get through this. And God bless him, he had to deal with her and me and all the tornado of stuff that was flying around. But I probably should have asked more questions, right? And made sure that at the end of the day, like this was going to be, we were going to get to where we needed to be. And I didn't ask those questions. And so there's a lot there. And how, I guess from your, like, how did you get in, what was your experience like?
All right. So we both admitted that we made mistakes, and that's what propelled us into doing the work that we did. I mean, I was with my ex for 20 years. I never thought that I would get a divorce. I was thinking logically. I thought, okay, it took 2 years to really get out, and I'm going to hire an attorney. And I love my attorney, but one of my first mistakes was my attorney became my best friend and my therapist, and I paid him $100,000 in a year. And that's what it took. And, he was great for certain things, but I never asked how he billed. Every 6 minutes I was being billed for being his friend. He definitely threw me some freebies, but I should have built my team of other professionals. Another mistake, like you said, you're a financial planner, so you thought, oh, I've got this, is we assume that because we have that expertise that we can handle so many things by ourselves. And you just can't, because it's your life and it's your case and it is so emotional. So it's important to get people, we call them positive advocates, who are going to be as fair as possible. And even if they're telling you things that you don't want to hear, they're thinking about what's best for your family. So on the contrary, there's negative advocates. And sometimes those tend to be people that we love who are like, well, you should just get this and she should just do that. And he should. And so they're kind of like contributing to the conflict. And lawyers can be that way too. They're like, let's go right to court. Let's litigate. We want to keep you out of court because we know the more conflict there is, the more expensive it is, but also that bleeds onto your children if you have children. And that's
100%.
the worst thing that can happen. So the more prolonged the conflict is, and I know you still have to co-parent till at least they're 18, and that's a whole other story, and we deal with that too. But to lessen the amount of money being spent to do a lot of things outside of the courtroom, and again, save yourself tons of money, but also become empowered along the way.
Yeah, I spent about the same amount of money on my own divorce, right?
Oh.
And it's like, think of where all that money could have went as far as college savings goes and other investments and everything else. It's just it's an absolute travesty. And you're absolutely right. I mean, like, not surrounding myself with the right people and the right advocates. And as we were starting, I was asking that question and then you were answering it. That was the word that came to mind. It's like, and that's what we do now in our world, is if we're financial advocates for most of the clients that we work with. We're here to help you make pragmatic and practical decisions during divorce, not to push the litigation along,
Right.
And make it even more complex and more costly, but to help you sort it out. And I didn't do that. I'll let my family's back on the East Coast and I'm here on the West Coast in California. And I'm 47 years old, but I'm still going to be I'm still my mother's baby. Right. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't about to bring her involve her in those conversations and make her life a living hell and have her worry about me. And people like a lot of my family members, I was just like, forget, I'm going to deal with it on my own. They're far enough away. They don't have to worry about the day to day of it. And that was a huge mistake that I made in my own divorce, not having those positive, that support system.
So
I'm since remarried, and my family law attorney came to my wedding. Okay. So talk about building a friendship with somebody, right? But it was that the right thing for me to do at that time? He's an amazing person. Yeah. I love him to death, and we're friends today. But should I have felt that way about him in that moment? Probably not.
Well, we don't know because it is such an isolating experience, especially high conflict divorce versus normal divorce. So one of the things that we do with our clients, and it's very unusual in the domestic violence spaces, but every week on Sundays, we have our weekly legal abuse support group, and we actually combine our male and female clients together. And talking about not doing it yourself, like many of our clients are attorneys, mental health professionals, custody evaluators, doctors, nurses, entrepreneurs, because they realize like, I can't do it. And there's a level of shame that goes with that. Like, I should be able to do it, but you can't. You just have to realize like this part I hand over to other people to help. And yes, certainly you can use your skills, but you need that support. So in the group, we basically strategize, but our clients they're so resourceful that they contribute so much to the group. And especially they're kind and empathic, and everyone is dealing with a really difficult ex, and having men and women together learn what it's like from the other perspective helps them heal faster. And then because we do so much strategically, they do really well in family court. So when we meet for the group, one of our little traditions, and here it is, actually. So we have this thing, we call it the balloon man. I'm not going to blow him up, but it's like one of those used car thingies. So when someone has a victory or progress, we show the balloon man, and we celebrate victories and progress. And it's just cute. Wonderful. But you do community really.
Is this the Fear to Fierce in family court group?
Oh, yeah. So Fear to Fierce. So that's a different thing. So the support group is like one of our client perks. But this year, we've just released this online education program called From Fear to Fierce in Family Court. And so it's going to be 7 different courses. And we just came out with the first one a couple of weeks ago. And that's on what we do more than anything. We call it strategic communication. But the course is called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind, because you're still dealing with that terrorist. And that is the number one thing that people's like post-traumatic stress disorder is still like, oh my gosh, just that ding in the inbox, or like, what's going to happen? Or is there more court stuff? And it's just like, so learning how to communicate properly and knowing you're probably going to be back in court, at least for our clients. It's like, how do I do it so that I'm ready and I'm confident, because I'm just terrified. Mm-hmm. You know, no matter how much time has passed, a lot of people still are like so scared about communicating properly. And, you know, what if I do the wrong thing and the judge is going to take the kids away, or they're going to think they're the better parent, and blah, 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 blah. You know, so it's like, get them from squatting between your ears, evict them.
But those are all legitimate fears that so many people have, including myself.
Yeah.
You know, we are just now almost 8 years after the divorce. Just now getting to the point where like conversations are amicable. We're all focused on the kids, like things are going good, but still it's like that inbox, you get that. I stopped checking my email during the day, because every time I get a damn Gmail notification, you'd have that little like anxiety.
Right.
And you're talking about like 7+ years post divorce.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to get. You're like, okay, what's waiting for me around that corner? And it's just tragic.
Right, right. So strategic communication is a way to turn the power dynamic around, and it turns hearsay into evidence. And it also protects people from false claims of parental alienation, which is huge in our world, where, you know, that's another attack they use, is they weaponize children, and they'll say, oh, you're keeping the kids from me and you're poisoning their minds. And so, you know, we have to make sure our clients always present as the best co-parent ever, and make sure they're not inadvertently sounding very like an authority or acting like they're the main parent. And people don't realize things that they can do without meaning to, that their ex's bully attorney is going to twist into something later.
Any other tips that you can share in that regard? Because I know that's one thing, like legal battles and high conflict and dealing with coercive partners. I mean, it's rampant.
Yeah. So since we're talking about saving money, like one of the ways I saved well over $1 million was after my my year-long divorce, my lawyer, I think it was the day we signed, my lawyer said, your ex is not going to comply. He's not going to listen. Let's plan for it, because you can't afford me anymore. You've already been financially decimated. So let's start planning for you to take care of yourself, for you to be self-represented or go pro se. And so I remember him saying, okay, you know, because my kids hadn't started college yet. And he was like, we got to start getting ready. And I was like, oh, he's, you know, he hasn't participated in anything. I'm just going to do. He goes, no. You got to make a paper trail. Like, it doesn't matter what you think. You just listen to me, because later you're going to need this paper trail. So he basically instructed me on a bunch of things I needed to do. And sure enough, 1 year and 9 months, I was back in court, and I spent 7 years thereafter and about 100 court appearances in New York and Connecticut representing myself. That's where I saved like at least $1 million. But the coolest thing was, I mean, it was bad while it was happening, but my ex appealed 4 times. And to go to the appellate court level, it costs about $15,000 to hire an attorney to make a 20-minute case for you. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep doing it myself. I did it. I won, and the case was so notable that it got published in the Connecticut Law Journal. So now it's case law for the state, which is a huge honor for an attorney, and it's unheard of for a pro se. So on top of saving tons of money, I got this huge triumph that I never imagined.
And this is case law in Connecticut now.
Yep. Yeah. It's in the Connecticut Law Journal.
Is there a name for the law?
Well, so it's case law. So case law is basically like you can look up the party's name. So it's Johnson versus Johnson. It came out in March 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody wants to see your case law.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of lawyers like it, but it's like 11 single space pages, very dense, but I love it. Yeah. Lawyers like it.
That's incredible. Yeah. And that's not the only claim to fame you have, right? So we have a book coming out, or did the book already launch? I mean, it's probably definitely launched by the time this is going to air. So where are we at with it?
This was the first book. So this is out. This came out in 2023. It's called Been There, Got Out, Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. And the book that's coming out later this year is also like another Been There, Got Out series. And it's called How to Handle When Your Ex is Turning the Kids Against You in Court and in Life, since unfortunately that is one of the most common things we see in our community. And so we want people, again, like early on, when you understand what it is and why they do it and what to do about it in terms of legally, and especially more actively and more effectively with your children outside of the legal system.
What can you do about it illegally? Because there was an element of, parental alienation, to the nth degree, even by, my ex mother-in-law, for crying out loud, with our kids. And every time I talked to my attorney about it, it was kind of like, well, we can try. I'm not really sure. Like, what rights do we have from a legal perspective?
So one of the so you probably heard of something called the best interest factors. Mm-hmm. And so that's things that courts look at when they determine custody. And one of the most important factors is which parent will support the child's relationship with the other parent. And the flip side is alienation, basically, is one parent attempting to undermine the child's relationship with that other parent. So there's 6 different, what we call alienation factors, based on a woman named Dr. Amy Baker and the Baker model, that are used, but it's important to understand what those factors are. So for example, blocking contact and communication is usually the one that's really obvious. It's like when you have a parenting plan or you have a custody agreement and someone starts not following it. And they're like, oh, you can't have the kids. Oh, they don't feel like seeing you. Oh, they have other activities. That's usually the first sign legally that you want to jump on it. Where if they violate that parenting plan and it starts becoming habitual, you really want to get it before a judge right away and nip it in the bud, because sometimes people wait and they don't realize, and they're like, oh, and then a judge is like, why did you wait 9 months before bringing this to our attention? Like, did you agree that this was okay? So that's one thing legally that you have a lot of clout. Like, someone's violating that parenting plan, that's the law. And a lot of times people will say, oh, well, my kids didn't want to go. And, you have to think about what the kids want, without realizing, like, that's the law. If your kids don't want to go to school, you can't just be like, well, they don't want to go. It's very serious to not follow a parenting plan.
I never would have went to school.
I know.
It brings me back to the old days when we wake up in the morning and look and see if our school is closed, with a little crawl that goes on the bottom of the screen there.
Snow days.
Like right? Snow days were good times.
Yep. Yeah.
This is what I would like to call the carte blanche segment of our conversation. So we've covered a lot in a very short amount of time here, but I think it's really, really powerful, a lot of the stuff that you've brought to light and reminded us of, because so many of us are going through or have gone through that experience. And if you're going through it now, I can sympathize with you. I can't empathize because I don't know your exact situation, but we've all been in that position in some respect. So are there any questions that I didn't ask, or anything you want to share with listeners that might be beneficial for them in this particular space, whether it be on the financial side or whether it be on the unfortunate violence side of the equation?
I mean, okay, so I think a lot of people in this situation have to they always feel like it's just them and they can't talk to anybody about it. And I think with people who have money or are successful, they think like they feel really stupid for getting involved in one of these relationships like these. I know our clients tend to be like very successful. And so often they're looked upon as role models of the community or within their families. And people will say things that are really hurtful, like, well, I never thought that you'd fall for someone like that. Or like, well, why doesn't the judge just do this? Or why? And so people tend to clam up because they feel like, again, there's that added level of shame. So I think it's important to make sure you connect with other people, like a community like what we have, who really, really understand and also know that instead of beating yourself up for being in one of these relationships, which affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men on average, that's a lot of people that realize they were drawn to you because of how successful and responsible and creative and amazing you are. We always call our people like the shining stars. We say we work with the best clients because all of them were targets of a manipulative con artist who picked them because they made that person look good. So please try not to like have that shame and feel like there's something wrong with you. It's the opposite. It's that you were so great that that's why you were a target. And then also think about how, people in these situations, we tend to think we can take care of everything ourselves. And, we're used to shouldering that burden. A lot of that comes from being in that relationship and tolerating a lot for a long time. But this is a time to now ask for help. And it's important to connect with others, like I just keep reiterating, who really understand it, because that's going to affect your confidence, which is going to affect everything moving forward. And if you have children, the best thing you can do is take care of yourself and get that support, because then your kids won't feel responsible for you. They won't feel like they have to take care of you. So it's so important to get help during a time like this. You're going to be stopping intergenerational trauma by taking care of yourself.
That is pretty powerful. And that was one of the things that I too, let fall by the wayside during my own divorce, which was, like I was running like 50 or 70 miles a week, super fit. And you just, hit me like a freight train in many ways. And you're just trying to keep it all together. And there was no way I was going to I had that energy to be able to do that any longer. And it just, in many ways, affected my health. And it's now taken me, years to get back to the point where it's like, all right, I feel overall much better. But sometimes some of that damage is, you can't see that damage that's been done, and stress and anxiety and, sleepless
photos,
nights,
right? From years ago, like you look like a different person. Going through that.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, to be honest. And and that's the thing. Like you made an amazing point, which is those shining stars, right? The reason why people are shining stars is because they've got it all together, and they've in many ways they've figured it out, and they're hard workers, and they're experienced, and they're excelling, and they're doing all these amazing things. And then something like this happens, and it's easy to be like, well, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome in many ways. Like, am I really that person if I can fail in this area?
Yeah, but that's why people like that are called energy vampires. And so it's important to remember that even though you feel awful now and it's terrifying and overwhelming, like you still have the skills and the core of who you were in the past, and you've lost it, but you're not going to get it back. You're going to be a better version. It's because you're going to be different. But you have to make sure you get the right support. But it's going to be so much better. It's so scary right now, but it gets so much better. And I'm speaking to you from the other side. 10 plus years out, I met the love of my life. He's the male half of Been There, Got Out. I found an amazing career, like my teaching skills, which had to be on hold for so long. And then I'm, spending all this time representing myself in court and suffering through it. I'm like, this is amazing, actually. Like, I got my best education in the trenches. We don't have any competitors with what we do exactly. So, you don't realize what the purpose is until after.
I would concur. I think that's like, I have a new purpose in my life, and at least on this, the second phase of my career, so to speak. And I'm super happy about the opportunity, and we're going to be doing some amazing things coming down the pike here, on the divorce planning side. So I think that's going to be really cool. And you're absolutely right. It's like sometimes you're going to suffer through it to get through to the other side and really be able to enjoy it. So hopefully that'll be the case for both of us. So thanks so much for all of your time today. It went by quick. That was a quick 30 minutes here. We could keep going because I know this is a hot topic, but I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners as well. So thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And you want to plug the book one more time before I roll us out of here?
Sure. Okay. So the book that's already out, it's called Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. It's on Amazon, and it's really easy to find us in general. Just look up Been There, Got Out, website, social media, podcast, YouTube channel. And if it resonates with you, just get in touch.
Amazing. I'm going to follow you as soon as we hang up here today. So thank you so much again for joining us today and sharing your invaluable expertise and personal experiences. For our listeners who wish to connect with Lisa or learn more about her work, again, please follow Been There, Got Out on social media and check out their other resources online. Remember, if you're facing challenges in a high conflict divorce or custody situation, we at Allegiant Divorce Solutions can help you as well. We can also get you in touch with Lisa if need be. And we're all here to help. So visit allegiantds.com for more resources and expert guidance. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more empowering discussions just like this. Until next time.